Hello. Today I'm going to be talking about security issues associated with cloud computing and how to defend against them. So first I'll talk about what the cloud is and what cloud computing is, and then I'll go into the cloud service models, which are made up of software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. And then I'll talk about cloud deployment models, which consist of public clouds, private clouds, and hybrid clouds. And lastly, I'll talk about security issues associated with cloud computing and how to defend against them. So what is the cloud? The cloud is the vast global network of servers that provide means to manage data, run applications, and deliver content via the internet. Almost everyone uses the cloud each and every day, but a lot of people don't actually understand what it is. Basically, it's the means of accessing data via the internet rather than data that's stored locally. When scrolling through Twitter or Instagram, a cloud is being utilized to deliver the content from a server to your phone. So in short, cloud computing is using the internet to gain access to computing services. So for a background of cloud computing, the idea started to gain traction in the 1990s, but it wasn't until the early to mid 2000s that it actually took off. In 2006, Amazon launched Amazon Web Services, which offered services to businesses online. In the same year, Google launched Google Docs, which allowed users to create and edit spreadsheets online and share with others. In 2012, Oracle released the Oracle Cloud, which offered services such as infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. In the past 10 years, cloud computing has increased drastically and will continue to grow. So there's three main cloud service models. The first being software as a service. This service is the most widely used service model. It allows an organization to skip the process of installing applications on each individual machine and instead access applications over the internet. An analogy to what software as a service provides is like ordering food from a restaurant. The restaurant oversees ordering the ingredients, cooking the food, and delivering it to the customer. All the customer has to do is pay for the food. Likewise, with software as a service, all the hardware, maintenance, networking, software licensing, etc. is dealt with by the provider. Platform as a service is when providers provide the platform where the tenants build and deploy their own applications. This is like using the kitchen in a restaurant to cook your own food with no other work necessary. For a tenant using platform as a service, they do not have to set up infrastructure or do things such as managing storage, servers, or networks. Infrastructure as a service is when service provider provides the infrastructure such as hardware and network, while the tenant still builds its own software and applications. Using the same food example as before, this is like using the kitchen at a restaurant but having to clean the equipment, order the ingredients, and prepare your own food. Infrastructure as a service providers provide the tools necessary for tenants, while the tenants do the rest of the work, such as monitoring and managing the system. Next, I'm going to talk about the three deployment models, which include the public cloud, the private cloud, and the hybrid cloud. The public cloud provides a large amount of storage with easy scalability, and the external vendor provides the maintenance. It is the cheapest method of deployment, but the least secure. The private cloud offers cloud services to one sole organization or tenant. This allows the tenant to have a tighter grip on the privacy and security of their private cloud. A tenant, for example, can choose to either self-monitor their private cloud or have the provider monitor it for them. While a private cloud is more expensive than a public cloud, it is much more secure and gives more control to the tenant. A hybrid cloud is a mixture of the public and private clouds. Using a hybrid cloud gives organizations the benefit of choosing which resources to send to either the private or public cloud. This is very beneficial as it allows an organization to put sensitive information in the private cloud while putting information that's not as important on the public cloud to save money. Now that we've covered the basics of what cloud computing is, we can go into the security issues associated with it. As you can see on my subtitle, I have more people using the cloud equals more security concerns. And this is true because the more people that are involved, the more money is involved with stealing information and malicious attacks on the cloud. First, I'll talk about insider attacks. An insider attack is an attack by someone working within an organization. These are usually very hard to stop because the individual is usually within their means to access the information. However, this can be limited by only allowing access to information if it's completely necessary. Organizations can also log and monitor employee actions, which can help with investigations down the road. And they can also provide incentives to employees that show the best security practices. Next, I'll talk about unauthorized access. Unauthorized access is when an unauthorized individual gains access to a cloud system. This can be done using a variety of techniques such as phishing, stealing passwords, and social engineering. These things can be limited by ensuring passwords are strong and changed frequently. This helps prevent attackers from stealing passwords. Next, you should educate your employees on the importance of keeping information private and not falling into phishing and social engineering traps. One of the biggest security issues with cloud computing is malware injections. These occur when malicious code is inserted into a cloud system and pretends to be valid. Malware injection types include SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and command injection. To prevent SQL injection, you should sanitize all user input by making sure that characters are not being used where they shouldn't be. To prevent cross-site scripting, you should use special PHP libraries to add a layer of protection to your site. And to prevent command injection, you should avoid the use of shell commands if possible. Next, I'll talk about data loss. This primarily occurs due to malicious attacks, but can also occur by other means, such as natural disasters and equipment failure. Ways to limit data loss include reviewing cloud service providers' policies regarding backup procedures relating to physical storage locations, physical access, and physical disasters. You should also have a good backup routine and disaster recovery policy to minimize the threat of data loss. And for maximum security, you should store data at an offline location in case of emergency. One thing that's not often thought about regarding security is compliance. Companies must comply with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. This is also known as HIPAA. The most basic thing that can be done to remain compliant is identify and protect against foreseeable threats. Also, routine checks on security should be made to make sure that standards are met within each specific industry. And lastly, it's important for employers to teach their employees how to remain compliant. I now want to talk about a couple of general cloud computing trends. First of all, I have found that most IT professionals actually trust the cloud more than on-premises computing. This is because cloud companies have invested heavily in keeping their computing secure. Next, cloud security technologies are often not the issue. The issue with security is the lack of security professionals to implement those technologies. Lastly, companies using the cloud that have a response plan in case of an attack are impacted significantly less than those who don't, so it is important to have one. So in conclusion, cloud computing is and will continue to grow. The benefits that it provides can save a company an enormous amount of money. On top of this, cloud computing also allows companies to scale up or down very rapidly. It is important to keep in mind, though, that there are many security risks involved. Companies must assess their computing environment and decide if using a cloud as opposed to on-premises computing provides benefit. If a company does decide to use the cloud computing, It must then determine which service model and deployment model suits its needs. Knowing the risks and taking preventative actions toward mitigating those risks can drastically reduce the chance of being affected by an attacker. And that's the end of the presentation. Thank you for listening and have a great day.